Hilchis Zchiah U'Matanah Perik Shmini. Now from here until the end of Zchiah U'Matanah Bemis, which at the end of Perik Yud Beis, the Rama is going to be discussing the dinim of a matna shchiv mira. Now generally we know that in order for an matana to take place, you have to have a ma'aseh kinyan. In certain cases there's a special din of advarim haniknim ba'amira. But generally speaking, a matana needs a ma'aseh kinyan. Just like mechira needs a ma'aseh kinyan, it doesn't help amira. So over here also you need a ma'aseh kinyan. Now there's an exception that a shchiv mira Chazal instituted, that when a shchiv mira says to give a certain person a matana b'teres matna shchiv mira, so then this, even though there was no ma'aseh kinyan, is divrei shchiv mira kiksuven ukimsuren domi, as if it was written, or if it would be karka, so it would be nikna with a star, or kimsurim if it would be metaltal, and it would be nikna as if it was moser, but I'll call upon him and has it in kiksuven ukimsuren domi, as if there was a ma'aseh kinyan. Now, Lepel Matan Shchiv Mira is not Kaina right away. It's only Kaina Lachar Misa, as we'll see the Prati Advarim. But that's the special din of a Matan Shchiv Mira, the Chiddush of a Maisa Shchiv Mira. Perik Shmini. Hasuma Eapikeach Yagidem, even though he's ill, he's blind, and or he's limps, he can't walk. Yagidem, he's missing an arm. Eyacheshish Bereshe, Be'ene, Beyodi, Beraglu, Kietzbem, he's having pain in his head, his foot, his hand. Harehu kebari l'chol dvarav, even though he's taka having pain, but nevertheless he's considered a healthy person as far as b'mikre, b'mkore, b'matonesav, and therefore, in order for him to affect the kinyan, he has to have a ma'aseh kinyan. Avol hachoila, shetoshash koyach kol haguf, someone that's ill, that he became very weak, he became weak, the entire body is weak, v'koshel koychi machmaz hacheli, ad she'eini yochel lahalach al ragli b'shuk. As a result of that illness, he's no longer able to walk around bashuk. And varehu nefel alamita. That's the lashon shchiv mira. In other words, he's shachiv, he's lying mira because he's ill, and he's no longer, as the illness is causing that he's so weak that he can't walk around. He has to be in bed. Is hu hanikra shchiv mira. That is the taich of a shchiv mira. Someone that's lying in bed because of his illness, he can't walk around. Umishpedei matonesav einon kamatnas berer. And the dinam of his matanas is different than a matnas bari, as we'll learn behemsha, that a bari needs a kinyan, masha'inker of shchiv mira, even without a kinyan. Kesad, shchiv mira shetziva va'omar, litein leplei nikach v'kach, bein bechel, bein b'shabbos, he instructed to give someone a certain thing of his possessions, whether this instruction was taking place on Chayil or was taking place on Shabbos, bein kosev, bein lei kosev, whether he wrote these instructions. Notice he wrote down these instructions, or he didn't write down the instructions. Now, the writing down of these instructions would bepashtus mean just a star raya that he has these instructions. This is not what we're talking about a star kinyan necessarily. Even a star raya is zochu hakel kishayomus. When the shchiv mira dies, so all these instructions that he instructed to give this person whatever he instructed is zochu hakel kishayomus bechol mashenos lehem. You don't need a ma'aseh kinyan. That's the chiddush of a shchiv mira, that through instructions that person was koine after he dies, and you don't need a ma'aseh kinyan. Shediv shchiv mira kiksuven ukimsurmim. It's as if it was kosev, which means, well, let's say it would be karka, so it would be as if it was kosev. Ukimsurmim, if we're talking about metaltalin, as if it was already misurim. Metaltalin is not nikna with ksiva, but as if it was misurim. The davar zeh, this din, that a divrei shchiv mira is kiksuvim kimsurim domi is medivrei seifrim. Va'aval pi she'ein ele medivreim, even though it's only medivreim, is also esa kishel teira. It has a din of kishel teira. Kedei shele titorev daite elov kshiyeda she'ein dvarav kayom. So in order for him not to feel that to become tumult, in other words, he realizes that he's about to die possibly, and he can't really instruct to knows what he's instructing since he's not making a proper ma'aseh kinyan. So it's nothing. So therefore, Chazal instituted that whatever he instructs is chal, and therefore he should feel ruik, that he's not worried and wouldn't be titorev daite olav, that he wants to do things with his money and that he's not able to do it. And Chazal gave it a din of kishel teira. Now what's the chiddush that it's kishel teira? Now the din is bechlal that when a person, for example, someone owes you money, the leva owes the malva money, and then the malva goes ahead and sells that shibud, or he gives that shibud to someone else. So the din is, so the malva could still be hamechesh tarchev lechaveri v'chazaru mochli mochel. And the reason is because lepel, since this mechira of a shtarchev is only a drabonon, minatera, there's no mechira of a shtarchev, so therefore be'etzem he still owes them. That's what the Rambam is going to say later. Be'etzem he still owes him the money, so therefore he could still be meichel. In other words, the original malva could be meichel the leiv of the money, even though the schus hagovaina he already sold. But that gather of selling is only a drabonon, and memela, since midiraisa you really owe it to the malva, so therefore the malva could go ahead and be meichel. Medvar mamurim benigea regular a mecher shtarchev lechaveri. Masha'enken, if a person l'moshel gave over a shibut, a shtarchev lechaveri through a matan shchiv mira, so now the question is if a yerush can be meichel. So normally a mecher shtarchev lechaveri v'chazru mochel v'afilu yerush meichel, because lepel the yerush is taking over the schus of the malva. So memela he can be meichel this chev which was really already acquired by somebody else. Masha'enken over here, when it was acquired by someone else through a matan shchiv mira, so Mimela, since the Chazal gave it a din of a diraisa, so that causes that the Yerush couldn't be able to be meichel that chev. That's a taich that also Eisa Shokishol Teira Kedei Shalititorv Daitiolov Ksheyedesh Edvarv Kayom Lefichach Im Omar. So since the din is that Divrei Shchiv Mira is kiksuv mem surendam, and there's no need for a kinyan. The fichach im amar k'chumimani. If he says k'numimani, he says make a ma'aseh kinyan for me. In other words, I want to make a ma'aseh kinyan. He wants to make a ma'aseh kinyan with me to affect what I'm saying. I want him to be koina. In other words, make a ma'aseh kinyan with me, which means that the Edom, whoever it is, would make a ma'aseh chlipin with the noisein, and that would affect the nesina to whoever the makabel is. Afilu b'Shabbos keinim imenu. Why? Because normally Shabbos you're not allowed to make a ma'aseh kinyan. But shizah kinyan in itself, since this is not really a necessary kinyan, because divrei shchiv miras kiksuv mem surim domi, so therefore the fact that he's making a kinyan b'Shabbos is meaningless. And also ve'ein shchiv miras tzarich leima atameidai. When a shchiv miras says nu mona lepleni, he doesn't have to say atameidai. Elakol hashemeya is dvorav harize eid she'ein adam mishata b'shas mise. And memela, normally when a person, be'emes the din of mishata nibach is benigea he does baldin. When a person is moida about a certain chiyuv, there could be a mitzvah called mishata nibach. Unless he says atam edim in front of the edim, it could be that he stammers he said it, but it's mishata nibach. Masha'enken over here, when a person says tunu mana lepleni, so later on they can't tie it that maybe it was mishata nibach, because einod mishata b'shas misa, and since he's ill and the bepashtus he's worried that he might die from this illness, so therefore a person wouldn't say this if he doesn't really mean it. Halacha hey, shchiv mira shetziva losis matana leuber shmei imei. The tziva was mitzvah to give a matana to the uber shmei imei, which means his own child, which is b'mei imei. Is the din is Zchiah uber mipnei shedaiti shalodem krei ve'etzel b'nei k'misha b'yarna. So just like we learned, you can't be makna to a uber. We're talking about you made a ma'aseh kinyan, but to your own child you could be makna because adam daite daite is krei ve'etzel b'nei. So al derech zeh, this din would apply to a matan shchiv itself. In other words, the fact that a ma'aseh kinyan could work for the uber, which is his son, that we learned already. Now the chiddush is that also matan shchiv also works for his own uber. Amar im yod ishte zacher itel mona v'im nekeva masayim. This is his wife was a muberes, and he said if he'll be a zacher, he wants him to take a mona v'im nekeva masayim, and lepel is yod zacher is netel mona. Now Yolda Nekeva, and they tell us Masayim. Now Yolda Zocher Unekeva, so she had twins. He didn't know she had twins, but Lepel, he said Zocher Zazeh and Nekeva Zazeh. So we assume that he was also willing that if it's a Zocher and a Nekeva, he should give Saif what he allotted for a Zocher, and Saif what he allotted for a Nekeva. Yolda Zocher Unekeva is a Zocher Netel Monav and Nekeva Masayim. Now Yolda Tumtum Van Dregenes, so it wasn't a clear Zocher, it wasn't a clear Nekeva. So then his neitel kipochish b'shtein, whichever one gets less. Whereas if he gave more to a zocher, then he takes like a nekev or a fakert, and he takes like the zocher. Halacha zayin. Shchiv mira she'omru le nechosiv lemi. They asked him. They initiated the conversation. Nechosiv lemi. V'omru lem doime sheyesh li ben. I thought I have a son. Or she'ishti mu'beres. Or I thought ishti mu'beres. Or ba'achshav she'ein li ben. She'ein ishti mu'beres. He's talking about himself. He's saying it loy. So therefore nechasiv l'pleni. So in Mele he's saying clearly that nechasiv l'pleni because I assume that I don't have a child. And then v'noida sheyesh li ben shehoyse ishte muberes. And lepel we found out that be'emes while he said this he did have a ben or he had ishte was muberes. Aval pi shehipiloi mesa ben acher kach lepel before he died. the child died, or the Ishte was Ipila, so he ended up really not having a ben and not having a Ishte Mu'beres. But nevertheless, since B'Shas Maisa, when he said the Nechasim Lepleni, it was because he assumed that he had a ben and Lepel at that point in time. I'm sorry, because he assumed he didn't have a ben, and Lepel at that time he had a ben, or he assumed his Ishte wasn't Mu'beres, and at that time she was Mu'beres, even though later on what he assumed was happening then happened later, but Lepel B'Shas when he said it wasn't there. So Memela, so the din is Ein Matanasi Matana. Halacha. So the first thing we learned, the Yisod Advarim, is that Matnas Shchiv Mira is Keksuvim Surim Domi, and even though there was no Maisakinyan, from deswegen the Amira itself, that's in itself a Maisakinyan. Now Halacha Matnas Shchiv Mira, Ein Keina Elo Lachar Misa. When is the Chales Kinyan of a Matnas Shchiv Mira? Is Chal Lachar Misa. Vein Achar Zecher Bedover Shetzivolei, Vein B'Mekarken, Vein B'Metalten Elo Lachar Misa. So this whole din that someone could go ahead and be koina what he said is going to belong to him, it cannot happen until la'achar misa. The whole chales kinyan is only la'achar misa. Halacha tes lefichach mitzian l'ksuba seisha umazin ha'almona v'habonis miyad elu shetziva l'asislem. Now ksuba seisha over here doesn't mean the regular ksuba seisha, because ksuba seisha, a regular ksuba seisha, you take also from the chasim shabadim. So in other words, if the husband, for example, sold b'chaya of karka, and then the husband died, and Lepel, now the Isha has to collect the ksuba, and there's no nechasim necherim by the Yorshim to collect, so she'll go to the nechasim shabadim. So there's no chiddush over here that she'll go to something that he gave with matnas chiv mira. But there's another din, there's a din of ksubas benin dichrin. Ksubas benin dichrin, we learned already in Hilchas Ishus, that means that let's say if the woman died b'chayav, so the din is, so she never really collected a ksuba, so the din is, that part of the Tanaya Ksuba is the Benin Dichrin, the Lehavi Lechiminoi, those Benin Dichrin which she had from this husband, so Memela they Yarshin from the husband, they that Yarshin from their father above what the regular Yerusha would be before they start Michalik the Yerusha with other Yorshim, they take the Ksubas Imam. That's called Ksubas Benin Dichrin. Certain cases. They don't take it if there's not enough left over, but I'll quote upon them, there's a musik called Ksubas Benin Dichrin. Now this din of Ksubas Benin Dichrin, they only Yashin. They don't take from the Chosim Shabadim. If there's no Nechosim Necherim to take it from, they're not going to go ahead and collect Ksubas Benin Dichrin. Now what happens if the reason why there's not enough there's no Nechosim Necherim to collect the Ksubas Benin Dichrin from is because the Necherim were given away b'matnas Shchiv Mira, so b'chiyah gavna, so then these bonim schorim could go ahead and collect this ksubas nindik. And that's what it means over here by ksuba. Nachmal halacha tes lefichach mitziin leksuba seisha, and the ksuba seisha over here doesn't mean ksuba seisha mamish, because there's no chiddush. Obviously a mitziin leksuba seisha, even from the mishubad mamish. Over here it means leksuba seisha of ksubas b'nindichrin, and also mazon ha'amana v'abonis, which the rule is that ein mitziin lemazon ha'amana ha'isha v'abonis. From the chasim mishubadim, you only take it from the bnei cherim, which the Yasemim have. But over here the chiddush is that if the father gave away these nechasim, b'matna shchiv mira, so l'chura they could time well where lekuch so to speak, and therefore ein mitziin l'ksubas b'nin dichrin or l'mozon ha'ishav albonis melekuchas. We say no. Bishlema, when there was lekuchis, knows that the father sold it b'chayov, so then tak is ein mitziin. Masha'inkan over here, the chales of the sale is taking place when the father dies. That's when the chales of the sale is taking place. And lepel at that same time, there's also the chales of the chiyuv, the mazon ishav abonis, and also the chiyuv of the ksubas b'nin dichrin. So therefore, you are mitziin in this case. That's the chiddush over here. Since matna shchiv min has only kain alachar misa, so therefore mitziin l'ksubas isha mazon almana v'abonis miyad elu shetzivu l'asilam, from those people that received the matna shchiv mira. Why? So Ram says shahari b'misasei neschayva nechasim b'ksuba b'nezenis. Right b'shas hamisa, they became the chiv of the ksuba b'nezenis. Ve'elu shenosilem liyikna lachar misa. They're only kain lachar misa. So since they're only kain lachar misa, so therefore they don't override the rights that the ksuba seisha and also mazna almana v'abonis come also b'shas misa. Now in Lashon, it's not so clear. In Lashon Rambam, the Rambam over here writes, "Sharim ben misosei nischayva nechosim b'ksubas ubimzenis ve'elu shenosalem leikonu elo lacher misa." Now, based on the Lashon Rambam, that's what it says in the Sma, that the pshat is azay, that the chiyuv of the Yerusha comes after he already died. Masha'in came the ksubas b'nin dichrin nalderes that the Mosen Ishin Valbonis comes bimisase. They come bimisase. So memela, so since it comes bimisase, it's kilo their rights. The ksubas b'nin dichrin nalderes that the Mosen Ishin Valbonis their rights came before the rights of the Shchivmira. That would be the pshat. Shari bimisase b'shas misa was right in Zchiah U'Matanah b'ksubas b'mzenis. Ve'ilu shenosalem leyikna lacher misa. So this is bimisase and this is lacher misa. So their chiyuv comes before their chiyuv. That would be the l'chura pshat over here, the Lashon Rambam, and that's how the Sma Bema says that's pshat in the Rambam. But the Maisa is that they ask that the Rambam himself writes in Hilchas Ishus that the reason is that they come b'basachas. The Rambam writes clearly they come b'basachas. If they come b'basachas, so why does taka ksubas isha and Mazan Almanas come? In other words, why does that come before? So yes, because that chiyuv, that yisod chiyuv happened earlier. In other words, he married this woman earlier, and there was the yisod of this chiyuv came earlier. So since the yisod of this chiyuv came earlier, so therefore that overrides the rights of the Matan Shchivmira. I'll call upon him, that would be the pshat. In other words, here, when you read it over here, there's a mokum to think that maybe the Yerusha comes after the Misa, Masha'enken, the Chiyuv comes b'shas Misa. So the Chiyuv came before the Yerusha. So therefore, the Chiyuv of the Ksubas ben Dichrin, Alderes, the Mosen Ishav Almanav Abonis came before. That's the way it seems over here. But again, as in Hilchas Ishus, over there, Khalil says clearly b'basachas, and since they came b'basachas, so therefore the geva. If they came b'basachas, why the geva? The Rambam is not masber. So there's a hesber, because since their chiyuv, sof kol sof, comes originally. There was the chiyuv of the Mosen Isha, and there was the chiyuv of Ksubas Isha. That was like a chales chiyuv that came b'shas the wedding. So memela that overrides this kinyan that he's going to get b'shas misa, which is the Matan Shchivmira. Halacha Yud. Matan Shchivmira shekoseh b'kinyan. So a person gave a Matan Shchivmira. He says this nechosim should go to someone else, and it says that he did a kinyan b'shas when he said it. Whereas besides the fact that he said it, he also made a ma'aseh kinyan. Now ben shehoyse b'miktzas nechosav, ben shehoyse b'chol nechosav. Now we'll soon learn that there's a difference between a Matan Shchivmira b'chol nechosav or a Matan Shchivmira b'miktzas nechosav. Now, b'chlol is just before we go further. When a person gives tama matona and he doesn't say clearly that it's b'toiras Matan Shchivmira, so then there's a chilik if he said kol nechosav or he said miktzas nechosav. If he said kol nechosav, so then we understand that it's b'toiras Matan Shchivmira. Masha'enken, if it's only miktzas nechosav, then it doesn't have a din of a Matan Shchivmira, and it's negate to two inyanim. In other words, a Matan Shchivmira b'chlol Matan Shchivmira is only kena lacher misa, and it's also kena without a kinyan. Not a Matan Shchivmira has kena right away, and it's kena only with a kinyan. So when a person gives a matana, we'll learn b'hemshech, when a person is ill and he gives a matana, say if he gives a matana kol nechosav, so then we assume it's a hiltedas Matan Shchivmira, and therefore it's kena even without a kinyan, but it's only kena lacher misa. If a person gives miktzas nechosav, that's what we're going to learn b'hemshech. When a person gives miktzas nechosav, so then it doesn't have a din of a Matan Shchivmira. It doesn't have a din of a Matan Shchivmira b'pashtus. It has a din of a Matan Zbari, and therefore you have to have a kinyan, and it's kena right away. If a person clearly gives a miktzas nechosav, and he says clearly that it's b'Matan Shchivmira, so then again there's a din of a Matan Shchivmira. The question is only when a person gives something stam, does it have a din of a Matan Shchivmira or not? So that depends if he gave kol nechosav or he gave miktzas nechosav. Now, lepel, when you have a Matan Shchivmira, which we know this is a Matan Shchivmira, why is it a Matan Shchivmira? Either because he said kol nechosav, or he said miktzas nechosav, and he said clearly it was a Matan Shchivmira. And lepel, it was kosev b'kinyan. It says that he made a ma'aseh kinyan. He made a ma'aseh kinyan by this Matan Shchivmira. So the question is, was he interested that the kinyan should take place through the kinyan? So if he wants that the kinyan that it should be affected, in other words, the kinyan should be affected through the Maisa kinyan, and on the other hand, we're dealing with a Maisa Shchiv Mirah, so a Matna Shchiv Mirah. So it comes out that on one hand, since it's a Matna Shchiv Mirah, it's going to happen Lachar Misa. But on the other end, we see that he's making a kinyan, and therefore maybe he wants that the chalesh should happen through the kinyan. Now, if that's the case, so Memela, it's not going to work. Because Lepel, a kinyan can't affect that there should be a Maisa kinyan Lachar Misa. A kinyan could affect for now, not Lachar Misa. A Matna Shchiv Mirah could affect Lachar Misa. Let's read again inside. Halacha Yud. Matna Shchiv Mirah, there's a Matna Shchiv Mirah. He has a star that says that he gave it as a Matna Shchiv Mirah. Shekosav b'kinyan, and it writes over there that there was a Maisa kinyan. Bein shehoyse b'miktzas nechosav, whether the Matna Shchiv were a miktzas nechosav, bein shehoyse b'chol nechosav, is always choishish in law. Shema ligomer laknesi ela b'shtar. Maybe the Shchiv Mirah, since it says that there was a kinyan happened, so he wanted that the Maisa kinyan should happen through the star, not through Maisa Shchiv Mirah. And Zchiah U'Matanah zuli tikna la. Laknesi el b'shtar doesn't really mean shtar. The Mefarshim was explained. It means laknesi with the kinyan. That's what it means. B'shtar means with the kinyan. Zchiah U'Matanah zuli tikna la Lachar Misa. Because lepel it's a Matna Shchiv Mirah. Is ein shtar Lachar Misa. Memela varei Matana b'teila. That's if if it's clearly that we're dealing with a Matna Shchiv Mirah. Whereas if a person makes a Maisa kinyan out, it's a Matna Shchiv Mirah. So obviously it works. But Masha'inkan over here, it's clear that it's a Matna Shchiv Mirah. So L'chura Matna Shchiv Mirah is the taich that we're talking about Lachar Misa. But on the other end, there was a Maisa kinyan. So the Maisa kinyan sounds like that he wanted it should take effect through the Maisa kinyan. And Memela, that can't happen Lachar Misa. And therefore, it doesn't work. However, V'imkonim imenu k'dei liyapis keiche, hamakabel, k'gei shekosav, v'koninu mimenu. In other words, the Edom right on the star that there was a Matna Shchiv Mirah. And also we made a Maisa kinyan with him. Moisev al Matana zu, besides the koyach of the Matna Shchiv Mirah, we also made a Maisa kinyan in order to enhance this Maisa kinyan, this Matna Shchiv Mirah. So therefore, Harei Yekemes, then the star is Kemes. So again, normally a star Matna Shchiv Mirah is Kein Lachar Misa. If in the star in the Matna Shchiv Mirah it says that there was a Maisa kinyan, so if it just says Stamazid there was a Maisa kinyan, there's a concern that maybe Ligoma Laknei El B'Shtar V'Shtar Lachar Misa. Masha'inkein, if he wrote clearly that this Maisa kinyan was only Moisef on the din of Matna Shchiv Mirah, so that he's Koina Lachar Misa b'tzad Hilchas Matna Shchiv Mirah, and the fact that he made a Maisa kinyan is only a Yisofa to the Maisa Shchiv Mirah. Halacha Yud Beis, Shchiv Mirah she'omar kisvu utnu l'plei nimona. Now over here, the tnu l'plei nimona is not really coming through the Ksaf. It's not that this is the Maisa kinyan which is causing the Hakno. That's clear. The question is, it could be that he doesn't really want that there should be a chaleis of a din of a Matna Shchiv Mirah until there's first a shtar. In other words, unless this recipient has a shtar, so he doesn't want that the whole din should happen. That's so he's saying kisvu utunu l'plei nimona umes kedem sheyichtavu v'yitnulei. So the din is ein kesem v'nesen because shema ligama laknesi ela b'shtar v'inshtar lachar misa. In other words, over here it means Shema Ligama Laknesi Ela B'Shtar means he doesn't want to make this Matna Shchiv Mirah unless there's a star. And Lachar Misa you can't write a star B'Shmei because at this point in time there's no musig of a star B'Shmei. So Mela the din of Tnu also doesn't falls off. Whereas the gather of Tnu over here was, in other words, I want you to write him a star and then Utnu Masha'inkein. If there was no star, so then there's no din Tnu. Now, however, the Omar Kisvu Kedeliapis Kecha Makabel. In other words, the Kisvu wasn't a Tnai in the Tnu, but it was rather only Liapis Kecha Makabel. Ken Shomer Tnu Mona Lupleni. In other words, Tnu Mona Lupleni. That's the Matna Shchiv Mirah. And then Va'omer Va'af Kisvu Tnulei. In other words, besides that, in other words, besides I'm telling you Tnu, but Lepel Kisvu Utnulei. So then it's a real Kesvin V'Chesmin V'Nesen Lachar Misa. So even if it's Lachar Misa is Kesvin V'Chesmin V'Nesen, because Lepel there was a Matna Shchiv Mirah, and part of the Matna Shchiv Mirah was that you should, besides giving him there should be a Matana, he should also have a star on the Zchiah. He should have a star on the Zchiah. So Memela is Kesvin V'Chesmin V'Nesen Lachar Misa. Halacha Yudalit, because Lepel, the Kesvin V'Chesmin is not B'Shmei. The Kesvin V'Chesmin is B'Shem Ayorshim. Ain't star Lachar Misa. Abel you're going to be a Kesem v'Chesman. And Luchur, if you're nice, why do you have to be a Kesem v'Chesman? Not really sure, unless we're talking about Karka. We're talking about Karka, so he wants that he should have a star for the Karka as well. Halacha Yudalit. Shchiv mira shekosav kol nechosav matana stam v'lei shir klum. He wrote that he's giving away all his nechosim, and there was nothing left over. Now the din is that that's a matan shchiv mira, and memela matan shchiv mira is kein alachar misa. However, in omad chayzer, if he was omad, he's chayzer. So now that's this new din that we're learning another din b'negei matan shchiv mira. Until now we're learning that we learned before the matan shchiv mira doesn't need a kinyan. Then we learned that a matan shchiv mira is kein alachar misa. And now we're learning that a matan shchiv mira, he could be chayzer from the matan shchiv mira. And those bepashtos, this goes together, because since the matan shchiv mira only worked lachar misa, so before it was chal, you could be chayzer from the matan shchiv mira. So is im omad chayzer vafilu konim miyodi k'dei lapis is kechei. Even if lepel there was a kinyan that was done, but the kinyan was liapis is kechei, because lepel, that kinyan wasn't changing the structure of a matan shchiv mira. Together with matan shchiv mira that I'm giving a matana, the matana is going to be chal lachar misa. But lepel, before the matana is chal, it could be chayzer. Bein sheikne kol nechosav le'echad, bein shekosum l'shtayim. Whether he knows over here, this din is talking about when there was a matan shchiv mira of kol nechosav. Since there was a matan shchiv mira of kol nechosav, so mele he could be chayzer from this matan shchiv mira. What is a matan shchiv mira? He wrote kol nechosav, whether he wrote it to two separate people or he wrote it to one person. He's not really giving everything away. Right now, he's only giving it away that there should be kain lachar misa. And Memela, since there's been kain lachar misa, so until lachar misa, he could have charata. Now, shir klum latzmi, if he didn't give everything away, he left something over for himself, ben karka ben metaltum, which is what we mentioned before. So then that's not this matan shchiv mira. Hareze matana b'miktzas. That's called a matana b'miktzas. It's not a matana bakel. Ustomek matnas bori shekeina mismana ksiva. So this is a regular din of it's like a matnas bori, which is keina right now. Lefichoch eini chezer, and therefore he can't be chezer. Who shekana miyadi? Shematna shchiv mira b'miktzas tzrichin kinyan ben omad l'vein lo yomad. So pashtus, in other words, when a person writes all his nechosim, or a person speaks about all his nechosim, so then that's called a matnas shchiv mira. Person matnas shchiv mira is giving all his nechosim away. Whether he's giving all his nechosim away to one person, he's giving nechosim away to a lot of people, and therefore lepel is only kain lachar misa, and therefore he can have charata. Masha'enkin, if he's not giving away kol nechosim, he's giving away miktzas nechosim, so he's still retaining nechosim for himself. So we don't look at that bepashtus. Unless he specifies, as we'll learn in the next halacha. We don't look at a matana b'miktzas as being a matan shchiv mira. That's called a matnas bari. A matnas bari is a kinyan, and the kinyan is chal right away. And obviously, once the kinyan was chal right away, so you can't be chayzer from the kinyan. That's poshut. Bamedvar mamurim, bamedvar mamur mishnosan stam. Shari anu aim dem daiten ve'emrim hail v'shir. Since he left something over for himself, is leidens chaven the lahaknis le mechayim matnas boris. So he's really only being maknim b'chayim. It's not a matnas shchimra. He's being maknim mechayim, and it's al derech a matnas boris. Aval im nosen li amikzas befeirish matnas shchimra she'ein el lachar misa. But lepel, if he didn't give kol nechosim, he gave mikzas nechosim. But he said clearly that he's giving mikzas nechosim b'matnas shchimra ain't it tzorach kinyan and v'mamat chezer v'im le'yomat kana zeh mikzas. That's this din. In other words, the difference between a matana b'miktzas and a matana not b'miktzas is whether or not we assume b'pastus that it's a matana shchiv mira. So in other words, when it's a matana completely, so then we assume that it's matana shchiv mira. That's we assume matana shchiv mira, unless it's not clear otherwise. If it's a matana b'miktzas, we assume it's a matnas bari. And the difference is a matnas shchiv mira doesn't need a kinyan. A matnas shchiv mira is only chal lachar misa, and a matnas shchiv mira you can be chayzer. Masha'inkin, if it's a matana b'miktzas, so b'pashtus it needs a kinyan, and it's chal right away, and you can't be chayzer. That's the pashut. Avalim nosli amiktzas b'feirish matnas shchiv mira she'eni el lachar misa. If he said clearly that this is a matnas shchiv mira, even though he's giving b'misa and it's only chal lachar misa, ain't it sort of kinyan? V'im amad chezer, and if he's amad is chezer, v'im lei amad is kana zeh amiktzas. V'im hoye bo kinyan. However, if there was a ma'isa kinyan, notice he writes that it's a matnas shchiv mira, and there was also a kinyan mentioned. In other words, he's giving it as a matna shchiv mira, and there was a kinyan. So then, over here there's a concern that on one hand it's a matna shchiv mira, and therefore it's only kind of lachar misa. On the other hand, he makes a maisa kinyan, which sounds like he wants that the kinyan should be chal, and the kinyan can be chal lachar misa. So if he writes that this is a matna shchiv mira, but lepel he's and noisav on the matna shchiv mira, he made a kinyan kedei liapus keifa. So then he's kind of lachar misa. Mikeach, the din of matna shchiv mira, and the fact that there is a kinyan is not mavalva the fact that it's a matna shchiv mira. Halacha yudches al titan shchiv mira shekosav kol nechosav upirish shenosna kel miachshav hikne michayim. Now, if the person is a shchiv mira, even though he's a shchiv mira, but he writes clearly he's giving away all his nechosim, and he writes clearly that he's giving it right now michayim v'hikne michayim, and he's a ma'aser kinyan. She'en's a matna shchiv mira ela kishar kol matna sabriyim. Shemigia shtar liyad the makabel eshekona miyad daneson. In other words, we're talking about something that could be niknu with shtar, mashal karka eshekona miyad daneson, or there was a ma'aser kinyan, is kon nakel vein yochel hasve. So again, the nekudas hadvarim is that really there's no difference. A shchiv mira could give a matnas bari. A shchiv mira could give a matnas bari, and a shchiv mira, even if it's a matana b'miktzas, it could also be a matnas shchiv mira. If it's a matana b'miktzas, it could be a matnas shchiv mira, and even if it's a matana b'kel, it could be a ma'aser bari. The difference is only when a shchiv mira gives nechos of stam. So then the question is it a matnas shchiv mira or is it not a matnas shchiv mira? So on that we say that if he's giving kol nechosav, so b'pashtus it's a matnas shchiv mira, and all the dinim of a shchiv mira apply. Masha'ekin, if he's only giving mixes nechosav, so then b'pashtus it's not a matnas shchiv mira, and therefore he has to have a ma'aser kinyan, and therefore he's kein mechayim, and therefore also he can be chayzer. Halacha yutes. Hanoisen matana kshu shchiv mira. A person gives away a matana while he's a shchiv mira, and v'koseba, and he writes in the shtar that he's giving away this matana b'chayim u'b'mavis. That's what he writes, b'chayim u'b'mavis. First he says b'chayim u'b'mavis, a mechayim u'b'mavis, ben bakel, whether it was a matana for everything, or it was b'mixas, or b'heil v'kosebe u'b'mavis. Since there was a mention of the word u'b'mavis, so the din is arezu matan shchiv mira, so it has the din of a matan shchiv mira. Shezu shekosebe b'mavis, which means shaliyikna al acharmis. So we nemon knows if a person writes the words u'b'mavis, even though it was a matana b'miktzas, and we learned before that stam matana, if it was matana b'miktzas, we don't assume it was a matana shchiv mira. But over here that there was a mention u'b'mavis, so we assume that it's a matana shchiv mira, even though he mentioned also michayim. Why did he mention michayim? V'zeh shekoseb b'michayim is siman liyashiv is daite sheyichin michaylizah. Whereas he doesn't want to assume for sure that he's going to die. So mainly he mentions the word michayim, but the word michayim is only for a siman that lav dafke that he's going to die michaylizah. Halacha chof shchiv mira shenosan hanechosim shahadover goli shehin kol nechosim sheyeshlei. That he gave away all the nechosim that we know about. We don't really know that he doesn't have anything else, but these are the only nechosim we know about. So the din is hareze kamatona b'mixtas. It has a din like a matona b'mixtas. Legabe the imkonu b'yodi if lepel they made a ma'aser kinyan, and then va'amad is a nichezer because chosh shenanu shem nishro li nechosim acherim dinas hayam. That maybe it's a matana b'mixtas, and if it's a matana b'mixtas, so there was a ma'aser kinyan on a matana b'mixtas. Memeli he was kain miyachshav. Memeli he can't be chayzer on it. Now the mashmois advarim is lepel. If there was a kona miyode and he was amar his chayzer, what happened if there was no kona miyode? If there was no kona miyode, there's a person a shchiv mira shenosan all the nechasim we know about. Now lepel, if it's only mixas nechasim, so memele he can't be kind of matnas shchiv mira, because since he didn't say clearly that he's being makned matnas shchiv mira, he said it was mistam. So therefore, l'chure, if it was a matana b'mixtas, it's not a matana shchiv mira. So mainly he's not kohen lachar misa. The Ram doesn't say that. The Ram says shchiv mira shenosna nechosim shadover goli sheim kol nechosim sheyashloi. So then it's harizik matana b'mixtas, and therefore v'mkonu miyad v'yamad ein nechezer. So the Magid Mishnah Melch is medayik that stam hazeh, when a person gives away all the nechosim we know about, we assume that it's kol nechosim. And therefore, lepel he's kohen lachar misa and has a regular din of matan shchiv mira bakoil. Mashenkin over here that there was a ma'aser kinyan which wasn't like a regular matan shchiv mira, So over here, since we don't know that these are all the nechasim, and there was a Maisa Kinyan, which seems to indicate that it's not a regular matnas shchivmira, so that's why he's ein necheza. Therefore, we consider it to be a matnas bari. Only in such a case we consider it to be a matnas bari. Choshen on Hashem and nishra le nechasim acherim. Dinas hayam. Atcheyemer kol nechasim shemelu. Either he said clearly kol nechasim shemelu, or shayam muchzik she'en le nechasim ela elu. And then it has a din of a matana bakel, then it has a din of a matana bakel, and therefore it has a din of a matana shchivmira. Halacha chafalef. Shchivmira shekosev kol nechasim lacherim. In other words, he gave away all his nechasim, he didn't give it to one person, he gave it to a number of people. And the question is, do we look at it as he gave it to Reuven, Shimon, and Levi? So do we say that he gave first to Reuven, part of his nechasim, and then gave part of it to Shimon, and then he gave the rest to Levi? Or lechatchila, he was giving everything to Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. So Rei, im kimachalik kosvan, and as if this was like kimachalik, he's giving out to Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, is mess when he's lies kanu kulam, because lepel was nosim kol nechasim, b'teiras matan shchivmira, and even what he gave to the first person was already part of the kol nechasim. Amad, if however, so therefore they were all kaina, and al derech zeh chayzer bekulam, so you can have charata. So in other words, all of them have a din of a matan shchivmira. However, kim nimlach. If it's Knibble, so knows, first he gives Reuven something, and then he says, I'll give Shimon something more, and then he decided to give Levi something more. Is Achar Shashir v'im Knimlach Achar Shashir Chazer v'Kasav? So knows it's kilo like he made up his mind after he left over some of his nechasim. Then he decided to write the rest of the nechasim. And v'konim miyad al kol echad v'echad lepel, there was a Maisakinyan on each nesina umes. So imes is kanu kula. So then they're all kind of because lepel. Since the first two are kaina because it was the matnas bari, it was a matnas miktas, and the last one was also kaina. Is kaina. Ahmad, however, Ahmad ein nechayzer el bachrin. So the last one has a din of a matnas shchivmira because the pale that was called nechazav. Masha'in kashari nosan called nechazav masharim menachmo. He gave Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Let's see, he had $300. So mainly he gave 100 to Reuven, and then he gave 100 to Shimon, and then he gave 100 to Levi. See, if it was lechatila like giving to Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, that was the original plan. So Mele, they're all have a din of a matan shchivmira, and Mele by all of them is if Ahmad is chazer from all Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Masha'enkin if lepel he gave to Reuven, and there was a Maisa Kinyan also, and he gave to Shimon, and there was a Maisa Kinyan also, and then he gave to Levi, and there was a Maisa Kinyan, and this Maisa Kinyan was behis sofa to the din of the din matan shchivmira. So Mele, so this Reuven knows it was this Maisa Kinyan. There was a Maisa Kinyan, but Lepel was a din of a Maisa Shchivmira. It was a Matan Shchivmira. So therefore, Reuven is Shimon, which was only a Maisa Kinyan. So therefore, it can't be Chayzer. Mashenk and Levi, which was already called Nechasav. So it has a din of a Matan Shchivmira and Memele Mamat Chayzer. That's this din. Halacha Chav Beis. Hakesev called Nechasav la'avdei, and va'amad is Chayzer ben Nechasav. Ve'ene Chayzer ben Eved. Shari Yotzel of Shem ben Chayzer. Chazal didn't want that a person that was Yotzel of Shem ben Chayrin should now be able to become an Eved again. So therefore, since Yotzel of Shem ben Chayrin, so Legabi the Eved, that he can't have Charata. Now, this star is considered a star shichur for him. But as far as the Nechasim are concerned, the Nechasim he can have Charata, because Lepel is B'matna Shchivmira. Halacha Chav Gimel. Shchivmira shetziva machmas misa, kigen sho yedaite neite shumes vaday, this is already more than a regular shchivmira. This is a shchivmira that's under the assumption that he's about to die, and that's clear from what he's saying. Is aval pi shekonu miyod b'miktzas lepel, even if there was a Maisa Kinyan, is chayzer. So before we learned that if there was a Maisa Kinyan b'miktzas, so we assumed that it was a regular Maisa Kinyan for now. It was miakshav because he wants it to be chal now. Why? Because even though he is a shchivmira, but lepel, since there was a Maisa Kinyan and it was a miktzas. So it's a regular maton of a bari. Masha'inkin, when we're dealing with a person that's tziva machmas misa, so that person, even when there's a Maisa Kinyan, we understand that he only wants to be makna lachar misa. That's this. The shchivmira shetziva machmas misa ken shoysa daitim neitu shumez vaday v'nikad dovers amiklal dvorav as aval pi shekonu biyodi b'mixas. There was a Maisa Kinyan on the mixas. Abulepel im amat chezer if he could have charot. Now it has to be that the Maisa Kinyan was liapas keche. In other words, if it's not liapas keche, so then there's a problem of enkinya lachar misa. So it has to be that it's the Maisa Kinyan is the Yapis Kecha, but Lepel is still working the Teres Maisa Kinyan. Now, V'amefarish B'yam, or V'hayetze B'shayora, or V'hayetze B'kela, or V'hamesukin, V'ushekofetz Olav Achele, V'hikpad Olav Cholye, all these cases, this Nacham Mefarish B'yam, someone is going out to sea, or Hayetze B'shayora is going with a Shayar is going to a midbar, which is a sakana, or V'hayetze B'kela is going out, he's a prisoner, or V'hamesukin, all these people, Kolechad Me'arbatam, Kimetzava Machmas Misa. And therefore, and also v'haridvarav kiksuvim kimsurin u'mekaymen eisen mes. It's again they have a din of a mitzvah machmas misa, and they have also this din of a shchiv mirah. And v'em nitzel v'amad over here afil l'konim yadi b'miktzas is chayzer kol kidin kol mitzvah machmas misa. Just like we learned that it's not as a shchiv mirah that konim yadi b'miktzas is taka can't be chayzer. Mashenkin a mitzvah machmas misa could be chayzer even if they were konim yadi b'miktzas. Halacha chafei. Shchiv mirah shenitak mecheli lecheli is im leyamad v'liholech al meshamti bashuk is matanosi matana if lepel he dies, even though lepel he dies from a different cheli, he went from mecheli lecheli, nevertheless the matana is matana. However, amad bein acheli shetziva bein acheli shebes menu. Notice first he was mitzvah when he was a chayla shchiv mirah. Lepel he became healthy, and then he again became sick, and then he died. And amad bein acheli shetziva bein acheli shemes menu. V'holach al mishamte, and he was walking on his own 2 feet. Is oim denese al pi reifim. Im machmas chayli arishin mes. If lepel he died as a result of the chayli arishin, is matanos kayemes. V'im lav ein matanos kayemes. I'm sorry, ein matanos kayemes. V'im hola bashuk b'lei mishanes. When the Ram said al mishamte, it meant al mishamte knows he was leaning on something. He was leaning on something. It wasn't that he was leaning on his own 2 feet. However, without any help, so then is because when a person walks out with a mishenes, so then we have to be assessed whether or not he died. When he died as a result of the first chayla, or it's a kilo or new chayla. Mashenkin, if he walks outside without a mishenes, he walks outside himself. But believe mishenes, so then, for sure, we consider that what happened before was batul, and now there's a new chayla kilu, and therefore the matash chivmer of amol is not chal over here. Halacha chavzayin. So notice the holding of the matash chivmer is only if he was mes michelizeh. Mashen, if he wasn't mes michelizeh, so mele that matash chivmer is batul. Matash chivmer she'en kosaba shemitech hacheli azet shetziva b'mes. And ve'eno eidem mitzuyin lishalem. So you have a star which says that this person was mitzvah to give this and this person this money, but lepel it doesn't say that he died. And lepel the eidem aren't mitzuyin to find out whether he actually died with that cheli. Is afal pi sherezah mitzvah mes. Lepel the person that gave he has a star which has the instructions of this person before he died, and lepel he died. But nevertheless, this is not really a raya. No, this is not a matana which could really, unless he was taka a shchiv mirah and he died this massive of cheli, only then does this matana take place. And since we don't have a raya that he actually died from that chela, so therefore a matana b'tela she'emi sosi raya shemen mecheli shenosen be'amatana nirpa. When he actually gave the matana, he was from that cheli he was already nirpa v'achar kachol cheli yachromes. Lefichach hanachosim b'cheskes hayorshim at sheyavi raya shemetech hacheli hazeh shenosen b'matana zu mes. Unless we could prove that actually when he was lying, he was a shchiv mirah and he gave a matana and he actually died from that same chayla that he was then a shchiv mirah, only then is he the person, the recipient, entitled to this matana. Mashenkin, if he can't prove that, so he's not entitled to that matana.